Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of On Air with Owen. And today I'm joined by a good friend of mine, Will Koning, who is the CEO and founder of SaaS Leads, SaaSleads.io. And we're going to talk a bit about what Will and his organization does in a minute. But to start with, I'll just welcome you on the show. Will, thank you for joining us. How are things?
Thanks, Owen. Thanks for having me. Hello, everyone that listens to this podcast. So yeah, I'm really great. It's a wonderful Monday morning here in Moorgate in London in our little WeWork. And yeah, all good. How are you?
Good. Yeah, very well. I'm excited about our topic today because we're going to be talking about the notion of outsourcing your sales, outsourced SDR, or building in-house, or indeed when do we leverage both. So we're right on your sweet spot on topic, right on my sweet spot on topic. And I'm sure that this is a conversation that a lot of sales leaders and founders are having right now, particularly with how difficult it is to hire good SDRs. So look, we're in a similar space. We do things in different ways. We collaborate as partners. So to put that out there, we work closely together on this with different solutions to ultimately the same problem. And I'm looking forward to chewing the fat on that today with you. Before we dive into this topic, though, Will, talk us through 2 minutes for those people that don't know you or don't know SaaS Leads. Who's Will? Who's SaaS Leads?
So who am I? I guess professionally, I am. I guess a sales nerd is probably the easiest thing. I like most salespeople, I fell into the profession having dropped out of uni, but it's something that I loved. And not only did I love that, I love training and helping young people get jobs. So it made so much sense that I do that as my career. So what do we do at SaaS Leads Academy? We identify really high caliber talent that could be excellent SDRs. They join our academy program for 3 months. In that 3 months, they do 3 things. They run a 12-week intensive SDR academy program, arguably the best in the UK, the world, if I'd like to say so. Number 2 is that they do lead generation on behalf of our clients. And then number 3, they work towards sort of working full-time with that client. So at the end of the 3 months, they end up working at that company. So I guess a hybrid between sort of if you were to build your team internally and then if you were to just do the pure outsourced, I guess it's a product that sits somewhere in the middle. And yeah, we're all about helping young people get jobs at the highest level.
And when an organization comes to you, I'm guessing there's a blend or a mix of people who are very clear that they want to run something externally, and there's a blend of people, and there's a group of people that are very clear they want to hire internally, and you're, like you said, sitting somewhere in the middle. Have you got a sense of sort of what the market is doing at the moment? Are more people looking at doing something externally, and more people looking at hiring internally? What are you seeing?
Yeah, so I think first and foremost, we are seeing this pain across the board, right? Yeah. Like this, whether you are a pre-Series A seed stage startup all the way through to a rather large enterprise company, we all have the same set of challenges, which is talent. Ultimately, I think it's talent. My co-founder might argue it's revenue. We could probably agree it's both because you need the talent to get the revenue. But I would say smaller companies have a talent attraction challenge they're looking to solve for. Larger companies have a talent retention issue they're looking to solve for, which therefore becomes a talent attraction issue. But they're all about talent. It's about how do you get the brightest and best talent into your sales force, and then how do you get them good, and then how do you keep them engaged, ultimately to drive pipeline and revenue, right? So and it's other than that, it's definitely it's remarkable the similar challenges at the highest level. But what we're seeing is for each size of organization, each industry, each company, they have their own set of challenges, and so they're very, very nuanced, can be very different. Yeah, hopefully that helps answer the first question.
Sense. So I think probably let's try and segment the conversation into why would you build this in-house? What does doing it internally look like? Benefits and challenges that come with that. And then maybe when we feel like we've covered that off, we can switch more to the outsource and then talk a bit more about when is it right to do both. I'm guessing we'll blend in the conversation, but let's maybe try and look at the in-house piece to start with. So
Yeah.
Let's explore that. What are the scenarios, or what are the sort of criteria that you would be looking for in order to say to an organization, if you were VP of sales, or you were a founder, we should be building this SDR function internally 100%. What are the things that you'd need in place for that to be the right thing to do?
Yeah, and whether or not this rings true for, then you would go for outsourced if we can't do it. But here's the things that absolutely must happen in our side for us to be successful. And I think for any SDR to be successful, is number one, I think you need to have some degree of product market fit. So this is for the smaller companies. Very junior sort of founder-led businesses, I would say, have a real challenge around that particular issue. So if you haven't got product market fit, that's going to be challenging for an incoming SDR function. The second thing that I would need to see in place to say, hey, yeah, we're going to be really good at this is a fairly decent level of marketing. Sales starts with marketing, right? Yeah. And now that I think by your smile, I think you feel the same. And that doesn't necessarily mean, okay, yeah, we're running a load of Google ads and PPC and all this stuff. Is that foundational like marketing effort that's going on? Things like content. Do you understand your ideal customer profiles? All of those things, you have to have that kind of stuff in place. And I'm not a marketing expert by any stretch of the means. If that's not in place, then I would not recommend investing heavily in an SDR function internally. That's for sure. So that's what I would recommend, sort of from the startup kind of smaller company. If we took it to the other side of the coin, which is where we're seeing quite a bit of growth, is in the enterprise space. It's a different kettle of fish. They've obviously got the marketing. They've obviously got all the sort of foundational stuff in play. What needs to happen there is first and foremost, there needs to be sort of executive buy-in. The SDR role, right, is relatively new. I think we can all agree that, certainly in this modern format, and certainly since sort of this digitization that's been massively exacerbated by the pandemic. Yeah. How we sell now is obviously not how we sold 2 years ago. And some of these enterprise companies are still playing catch up with that. Understandably, they're large organizations. So we have to have that executive buy-in, that not only are you kind of investing in, new junior salespeople, but it's that change that you need to invest in as well. So that's new processes, new solutions, new technologies, a new way of doing things that engages with their customers. And that can be quite complicated, because we know how enterprise sales are. They are a little bit more complex. So hopefully that's gives you an insight there.
It's interesting because you touched on the sort of stakeholder engagement, and I always link that back to expectations. You and I both know that whether you build this internally, whether you use an external organization to help you with that, whether that be somebody to feed you staff internally, or whether that be somebody to run the program for you, or anything in between, it ain't easy. And you need a huge amount of tolerance for failure. You need patience. You need to accept the trial and error that comes with it. And in my experience, it's one thing to get your first stakeholder, the person who's driving this, the decision maker, to understand that when they walk into a board meeting in 3 months' time, and they've got to justify the costs and the journey and the process and not the return yet, that changes very quickly. And that's why it's worth those conversations up front, right?
And like I would say, you've got to have board buy-in, right? The board has to understand that in order to solve their revenue problem, which is probably what's going on, that they have to solve their pipeline challenge, and they need to understand the industry and the market in which we're in. And the market is volatile, it's crazy, and every SDR gets approached by recruiters for debatably overly overpriced salaries at the moment. I understand why, it's supply and demand, but there's a lot of people that just need to understand that world that we're in. And I imagine that's probably very same for your customers, right? You just have to manage clear expectations. And I wouldn't want to work with a company, an outsourced function, that isn't managing those expectations, especially in this game.
Which leads you back to the buying process around anything outsourced. It's like careful of those who overpromise or promise the world, because actually you're probably the same as us. We're actually educating people around what's likely to fail. What are the things you've got to factor in that are going to go wrong, rather than just living in the dream world, suffering from fools gladly, thinking it's going to be perfect and work every time. Which you and I both know the world is not like that.
It's not like that. And I say, as a very young startup business in the early days, I was most likely guilty of over promising and under delivering, and really it must be the other way around, right? And that's something we work very hard at Sasleys to work on, and again, that education process as well. So heavily investing in things like customer success, building those relationships, managing expectations. My team do it much better than me, that's for sure.
Yeah, my team do a lot better than me, so that's a good thing. So let's go back to the building internally thing, and I think I want to explore that earlier stage piece that you talked about, rather, because I think by enterprise you've probably already got a function of some sort. It's to be an enterprise business and not already have a SDR function is more likely they're building it, growing it, than starting it from scratch at that level, although it does happen. If you look at that earlier stage, so seed, Series A, building it for the first time, we've acknowledged that marketing is great. We've acknowledged it's driving demand. We've got inbound coming in, but we want to scale. We want a bit more control over it. We want to build our SDR function, start looking at outbound. Leadership then comes into a really interesting, or comes into play here massively, doesn't it? So I talk about a lot the sales founder versus the technical founder can be a great factor as to whether you should build it internally, but also just having, whether you bring in a co-founder like you did, or whether you bring in your first sales hire who's going to build it and run it for you. There's a really critical turn in the road or junction in the road there, isn't there, where you have to make a decision. Are you going to build it and do it properly internally, or are you going to own the fact that you might not be the best people to do it?
I think the real question is, when are you going to build it internally? If you look at every successful business in the world, they have their own internal sales team. B2B, don't fact check me on that, please. But I would say the majority have a successful internal. Now, I think if you think about it from a founder, and we're going through this sort of with our kind of investor conversations that we're looking for, is that there's the pressure of time, right? Investors, especially now, they want to see dollars and pounds today. Right. Gone are the days, I think WeWork did that for us, of like just taking all this capital and not generating the revenues on the other side. That appetite is certainly, the appetite for no revenue isn't quite what it used to be. So investors worth their salt are looking to see revenue today. Now, if you haven't got so that's an interesting timing perspective. So you're at pre-seed, you need to raise a seed fund, or a seed fund, and you're looking to get to a Series A. You need to be able to demonstrate to those investors that this is a viable business proposition, right? That's where I think a lot of founders fall short, is they forget to make money. Especially product focused ones, right? And you have to get that. And that is so hard. Ironically, at Sasleys, we have it the other way around, where our go-to-market is okay, but we haven't got any technical founders, so that's a challenge for us, right? But for majority, you're typically a product-led founder. You've sold to all your mates. You've hired a VP of sales if you're lucky. That's good. And now that VP of sales needs to, deliver. And that's incredibly hard, right? So the VP of sales has to make a number of choices, or the founder has to make a number of choices, right? They're not just focused on lead gen, they have to care about revenue. Like, that's probably the first thing. They have to figure out the sales process. They have to work with marketing teams, sales teams, product teams to really work on that value proposition and the product market fit. There is so much that first sales hire or that founder, the sales founder, has to do to make that work together. And I think first things first, for any product-led founder that thinks that hiring a VP of sales, that their days of selling are over, they are wildly mistaken. And any VP of sales going into that role where that's what the founder said, run a mile, right? Selling is Oh,
carry on.
oh, we lost you.
You're back.
So that first, that first sales hire, they've got so much to do, right? So much, and one of those things is solving for pipe. Now, given the time constraints, let's just say, you say, right, I need pipeline, ASAP, right? And you don't have necessarily the time or the expertise or the resource to implement in that, and it's really the short time limit, I'd say go speak to air marketing. In fact, we do that with a lot of our people that we talk to, right? We say, right, if it's soon as possible and you don't want to invest in the time and the resource, etc., go for it. The other thing as well is the actual amount of money that you need to invest. Now, I'm not unsure of air marketing's pricing, but certainly from my perspective, when we're talking to our customers, it's like, look, if you're going to invest in the sales team, it's not what we charge for our 3-month academy. Are you prepared? Are you ready to invest in a full-blown SDR team for years? We're just accelerating that and making it better for you. Think about the cost over 12 months after we're gone. Are you ready for that? And that is starting to add up. And I think I put on this, we were chatting on this post last night, weren't we? It's like, it's at least £100,000 per SDR to do it properly. At least. And so many sort of, I would say, smaller businesses, they think that somehow SDRing is like a cheap form of marketing. Those days are long gone, right? This is a serious strategic investment that is going to cost you hundreds and thousands of pounds. Do you have the capital to do that? If the answer is no, and you still need to get lead gen, I would say consider speaking to an outsourced person, right? That's the kind of, and I think this goes back to that education piece about what is right for you. So that's something we talk to our customers a lot about. Yeah,
it's interesting, isn't it? Because I'd almost argue, if you haven't got that, don't do either. Find a way to invest the money anywhere, because this is part of the challenge, and we've had many a discussion around this in the past, including our conversation on LinkedIn last night around there's one set of expectations. If you do this yourself, you're very patient with yourselves, you're very accepting that, it's not going well, let's try something different. As soon as you bring in a third party, a SaaS lead, an air marketing, and anybody, the expectations change and the way that you make decisions change entirely. So if you're saying, I'm not ready to make that investment, but I'm going to outsource, I'll tell you now it's going to fail, because you're not going to, it doesn't matter where the money's going, whether it's going into the pockets of employees to and all the supporting costs, or whether it's going into an outsourced agency, which ultimately is the same thing, because the money goes and then gets spilled into the pockets of the employees who are the SDRs doing the work. Ultimately, the journey is the same. The journey is exactly the same. There are nuances between them that we might not have as much control over here. We might get educated over here. We got more control, but we'll be in the blind, in the dark a bit more, and making our own mistakes and not leveraging the learnings from other clients, all that kind of stuff. And you can debate that till the cows come home. But the fact is, it costs money. And an SDR program, whether it's run through third party, internally, or a blend of the two, will take 6, 9, probably 12 plus months to start to get you a return. And you can't do that on 10 grand, 20 grand. You cannot do that. So it's funny, isn't it? Because I think your point here is that this is a serious strategic decision. However you play it, however you do it, yet people seem to just take a couple of calls or a couple of meetings internally and jump in, and suddenly they're hiring for SDRs, and you think, oh no, they're in trouble.
They are, and like, I think, like I said, it probably comes back to the fact that they've raised money and they probably perhaps shouldn't have,
or somebody told them they need an SDR function.
That's it. And like, there's so much pressure to drive revenue on these founders. Like, I do understand that there's a lot of pressure on me and for you as well. Like, and especially when you get into this VC game and stuff, and most of our customers are in that game. You can understand the pressures and that come with that, but it doesn't change the reality, and the reality is exactly that, dude. It's the fact that this is going to cost you a lot of money, and my heart goes out to the founders for sure.
We're so sympathetic towards them, aren't we? It's like, get the violin out. It's hard.
It is. It's a tough game. It's a tough game, and I didn't. I'm in a high growth business, and just just that some of the things that, I did not, when we said, I'm going to be a CRM fan, I remember telling you, right, I was like, I'm going to do this. And you gave me some really great tips. But the things that I do now have nothing on my day to day, have very, very, very little to do with, actually the service and product we provide. You find yourself solving challenges that have never been there, never before. And you can imagine a product-led founder, they've gone, cool, I'm going to build this really great insert fintech app here, and we're going to solve this wonderful problem. And now they're dealing with this very complex challenge of a sales team, which I've been building a sales team or sales function, and we've been in this game for 15 plus years, and even we know how hard it is. And they've convinced investors they can do it, because they've sold to all their mates and they've had some traction. But to get to that next level, it's the hardest thing in the world being a founder, right? Well, I'm not going to say the hardest thing as well, but it's in the business world, it's up there, right? So as you know.
It is very different. And I think going back to even the hiring the VP of sales who's done it before, chances are they've done it before in an organization, or maybe two. Probably in the second they were arm's length rather than hands-on, and that experience is still very limited. And you and I both know that you can run one process for an organization that works really well into one market. You go into another market and try and copy and paste. It doesn't work the same. It doesn't work the same. You've got to be ahead. You've got to be tweaking and thinking about different approaches and your messaging and how that market engages and all those sorts of things. Yet we seem to think that we can do something once and then it just works forever.
Yeah, no, and that's where the testing and the data and the correct reporting comes in, and even that's a nightmare to fix, which is again the VP of sales role as well. I think that the VP of sales, the challenge going back to like bringing that VP of sales in is that they're either, to your point, very experienced. The challenge with that is that they're not, if they've come from like a big company trying to do a small thing, that what I see is that they perhaps wait for things to come to them and come across, and actually a founding, like, I'd say a founding team member type sale. A founding team member type sale is actually, to get very much get their hands dirty. But then conversely, you've got someone that perhaps hasn't had that kind of head of sales role before, but they've got all the traits and attributes. They're getting their hands dirty, which is probably where I came from, frankly. The challenge there is that then as the business grows and evolves, they have to then grow and evolve with that business, and their gravitas has to increase each time. And that has its own set of challenges, especially when you have board and leadership and all that stuff. So it's really hard to get that right.
No, I agree. And well, you touched on something earlier I just want to circle back to, which is around the notion of, everyone has it in all of the successful companies have it internally. And I 100% agree, that you get to a certain point where you're going to have to do it internally and own it. Interestingly, when I look at our top 5-10 clients, they all run with us and have successfully internal. So all of the people who spend the most money with us have an internal team, some of which are doing something slightly different to us, a different market, a different product, whatever it might be. Others are doing just more of the same thing, some of which we outperform, some of which outperform us, but we're still competing and we're in there. And that's just the reality of life. Just wondered if you could give some commentary and narrative around the examples where you would see that working. Why would you run two alongside each other, one in-house, one externally? What would be the benefits and the challenges around doing that?
Okay, so if you had, let's just say you're VP of sales and you've got a ton of money, right? You want to be testing and you've got product market fit and we're off to the races, right? Let's just say we're in that ideal zone and we're off to the races, and here's the rocket ship. Right now, I would want to be absolutely building my sales SDR team internally. There's a ton of benefits outside of lead generation. This is, if you treat your staff right, they're going to be your future revenue leaders. They're going to be your future, middle management, all of that kind of stuff. So that's really important. But then how it could work with having an outsource function is exactly that. Okay, cool. I've still got a talent attraction issue. We are in a tight market. Actually, I need to attract this territory as well. I also want to test stuff. Right. Here we go, air marketing. Let's work that play. I would absolutely be doing that if I could. Right. Because I just want to, if I needed to drive and it's a land grab exercise, right, I'm going to be driving as much pipe as possible. Great. you're then testing data, if you can measure and test as well, and the more you can test, wonderful, right? And if you can combine all those learnings, I'll be doing that all day long. And actually, if you think about some of the bigger enterprise companies, they do this, right?
Yeah.
They do this all day long, and that's because actually these markets that we're in, any business with a total addressable market of what, they should have at least sort of 20 million minimum, right? Minimum, probably more like a billion, it's that's what we want. Then actually you're never going to have enough bums on seats, are you? At the end of the day, never, especially in this market.
So true. So look, I'm keen to just wrap up and give the audience a chance to understand, what can you help with? So why would they come and talk to SaaS leads? Our audience are a mixture between individual contributors, sales leaders, founders, marketeers. So across that market, who should be coming to talk to you? How can you help them? And how can they get in touch with you?
Okay, so one of our values is pay things forward, or pay it forward. We like to help. It's how the foundations of this business. So anyone is more than welcome to come and reach out to me or any of my team, and we will always point them in the right direction. We are first and foremost sales experts. Any individual contributors, if you're ever looking for some advice or some help, just reach out to us. Follow us on SaaS Leads. We've got some really great content on there. SDRs in particular, but AEs, you should be generating pipe anyway. And if you're not, naughty,
naughty AE,
it's naughty. AEs generate pipe, and if you're not one of the best, right? I learned that the hard way. I thought I was amazing back in the day. But actually more for businesses that need help. If you're looking to build out a talent, an SDR function, and you want to build that internally, you've got two choices, right? Traditionally you have two choices. One, you do it yourself. Two, you use a recruiter. But then you've also got the challenge of ramping them up and then keeping them engaged and retained. And then also further down the line, you want to get them promoted to account executive. And at the moment, we help with the attraction of that talent. So we have a pool of candidates that could be great SDRs. You would select them, come in, and then we would train them for 3 months and place them. That sounds like something that should take up a lot of time. It's one of the best training academies in the world, like I said. The idea is that it's going to take a lot of time and effort off your hands. So they're the kind of people to reach out to for us. And then further down the line, we want to be helping with keeping them in the business. So we would welcome anybody that's got any of those kind of pains. At the moment, we're doing a ton of research. We like to chat. We like to build a community. Anyone that's seen us on SaaS Leads on LinkedIn knows that we're all about that. So if there's anything I can do to help anybody, please reach out.
Love it. We'll keep doing an amazing job. All of the social, all of the content that's coming out is incredible. Loving the brand and the way you're building the business. Keep doing it, and thank you so much for joining us.
And thank you for supporting me, Owen. Do you remember those early conversations that I had with you? I was quite surprised that I think most people think that we would go against each other a lot, and actually here you were supporting me, and it really opened up my eyes to saying, actually, we need to work together more as a community and stuff. And without sort of some of those early conversations that encouraged me, I don't think I'd be speaking here to you today. So thank you.
Thanks, Will. Appreciate it. It means a lot. And thank you for joining us. We'll catch up soon.
See you in London soon. Yeah.
Indeed.
Nice
Cheers.